There's a particular kind of invisibility that comes with being the youngest child in a family of overachievers. You become background noise, present but not particularly noticed, discussed but not particularly understood. I'd been invisible to my family for so long that I'd stopped trying to be seen. My older brother Christopher was a federal prosecutor in Manhattan, the kind who made headlines prosecuting white-collar criminals and corruption cases. Every Sunday dinner included updates on his latest courtroom victory, his media appearances, his rising profile in legal circles. Mom kept a scrapbook of his newspaper mentions. My sister Victoria ran a successful chain of boutique fitness studios across the Northeast. She'd been featured in Entrepreneur magazine, spoken at business conferences, built something tangible that our parents could explain to their friends in one sentence. Then there was me, Daniel, age 35. The one who works at hotels. Daniel's in hospitality, Mom would say at her garden club meetings, her tone suggesting I served continental breakfast at a budget motel. Not glamorous, but he seems happy enough. The truth was considerably more complex, but I'd learned years ago that complexity didn't interest them. They wanted simple narratives, clear hierarchies, accomplishments they could brag about at cocktail parties. Federal prosecutor? Perfect. Fitness entrepreneur? Excellent. Hotel worker? Well, someone has to do those jobs. Today's family gathering was Victoria's engagement party, a lavish affair at our parents' estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. She was marrying another entrepreneur, someone equally successful and photogenic, and the party reflected the appropriate level of celebration for the family's golden child. I'd arrived early to help with setup, which seemed to surprise everyone. Daniel, you didn't need to come so early, Mom had said, eyeing my simple navy suit with faint disapproval. You must have taken time off work. I hope they don't dock your pay. I arranged my schedule, I'd replied, which was true. I'd rescheduled 2 board meetings, postponed a property acquisition negotiation in Singapore, and delayed a conference call with the expansion team in Dubai. But those details seemed unnecessary to share. The party was in full swing by late afternoon. 200 guests scattered across the manicured grounds, champagne flowing, a string quartet playing near the garden. Victoria held court by the pool, radiant in a designer dress, her fiancé beside her looking appropriately successful and proud. I was arranging flower centerpieces on one of the tables, actually helping since the catering staff was overwhelmed, when I heard Dad's voice behind me. Richard. Margaret. So glad you could make it. Dad's booming welcome carried across the lawn. He was greeting the Hendersons, old family friends who owned a small chain of car dealerships. Wouldn't miss it, Richard Henderson replied. Victoria's engagement is wonderful news. And how's the rest of the family? This was the part I'd learned to anticipate. The family status report, where Dad would catalog his children's accomplishments in descending order of impressiveness. Christopher's doing brilliantly, just closed a major corruption case. Made the Times and everything. Victoria, well, you can see how successful she is. The fitness studios are expanding into Massachusetts next quarter. And your youngest? Daniel, isn't it? Pause. The subtle hesitation that meant Dad was calibrating how to present me. Daniel works at the Hilton. In hospitality. Oh, hotel management? Margaret Henderson sounded interested. That's a solid career. Not exactly management, Mom interjected, appearing beside Dad with fresh champagne. She lowered her voice to a confidential tone, as if sharing something vaguely embarrassing. He's in housekeeping. But it's honest work and the benefits are good. Not everyone can be an overachiever. I continued arranging flowers, my hands steady despite the familiar sting. Housekeeping. They genuinely believed I worked in housekeeping at a Hilton hotel somewhere. Not which Hilton, not in what capacity. Just a vague understanding that I worked for the Hilton brand in some menial capacity that didn't require further explanation. Well, hospitality is important, Richard said charitably. Someone has to keep those hotels running. Exactly, Dad agreed. Daniel's always been more hands-on. Less ambitious than his siblings, but he seems content with his life. We've accepted it. They'd accepted it. How generous of them. The conversation drifted to other topics and I finished the centerpiece arrangement. One of the actual catering staff, a young woman named Maria who I'd been helping, gave me a sympathetic look. Your family doesn't know, do they? She whispered. Know what? Who you are. What you actually do. She gestured subtly at my wrist where a Patek Philippe watch caught the afternoon light. That's a $60,000 watch. Housekeeping staff don't wear $60,000 watches. I smiled slightly. They see what they expect to see. Anything else doesn't register. That's insane. That's family. My phone buzzed in my pocket, the third time in 10 minutes. I'd been ignoring it, trying to be present for Victoria's celebration, but the vibrations were becoming insistent. I pulled it out discreetly and glanced at the screen. 3 messages from Margaret Chin, my chief financial officer. Daniel, we need to finalize the London acquisition numbers before the board meeting. Can you review the updated projections? Also, the Wall Street Journal is running the profile tomorrow. They want a final quote from you about the expansion strategy. And the Dubai team needs approval on the construction timeline. They're waiting. I was typing a response when another message appeared, this one from James Rodriguez, my executive vice president of operations. Chairman, I know you're at a family event, but we have a situation in Tokyo. The regulatory approval hit a snag. The legal team needs guidance and the Japanese partners are getting nervous. Can you join a call? I sighed and glanced at my watch. The board meeting was scheduled for 5 p.m., in exactly 43 minutes. I'd planned to slip away quietly, take the helicopter from the nearby airfield, make it to Manhattan with time to spare. But the timing was getting tight. I was calculating logistics when Christopher appeared, martini in hand, his federal prosecutor confidence radiating like a force field. Daniel, actually helping the caterers? That's very hands-on of you. He wasn't being mean exactly. Just patronizing in the way that came naturally to him. Must be all that hospitality experience, right? Knowing how events work. Something like that. You know, if you're interested in advancing your career, I have a friend who works in hotel management. Real management, I mean. Corporate level. He might be able to get you an interview, help you move beyond the housekeeping thing. You're 35. Probably time to think about climbing the ladder. I continued straightening napkins. I appreciate the thought, but I'm pretty settled in my current position. Are you though? I mean, housekeeping is fine for someone starting out, but you've been doing it for what, 10 years now? Don't you want more? Leadership? Real responsibility? Before I could respond, Victoria swept over with her fiancé Marcus in tow. She looked radiant and slightly drunk, the perfect combination for an engagement party. Danny, my baby brother, helping make my party perfect. You're so sweet. She kissed my cheek, leaving a lipstick mark. Marcus, this is Daniel. He's the practical one in the family. Works at a hotel, keeps his feet on the ground while the rest of us chase big careers. Marcus shook my hand with the firm grip of someone trying to establish dominance. Hotel work, huh? That's solid. Not flashy but steady. Respect. Thanks, I said, because what else was there to say? You should talk to my cousin, Marcus continued, warming to his subject. He's in hospitality management consulting. Makes serious money helping hotels optimize operations. If you're interested in breaking out of housekeeping, he could give you some pointers. Maybe help you transition into a real career path. My phone buzzed again. Margaret, Daniel, we really need you. The board is assembling early. Some concerns about the Tokyo situation that require chairman input. I glanced at the time. 4:23 p.m. I needed to leave in the next 10 minutes or I'd be late, and being late to my own board meeting would raise questions I didn't want to answer. I actually need to head out soon, I said, pulling my keys from my pocket. Work thing. Victoria laughed. Work thing? On a Sunday? What, is there an emergency with the towels? Christopher chuckled. Maybe someone important checked in and they need extra housekeeping staff. Daniel to the rescue. They were all laughing now. Not cruelly but with the casual dismissiveness of people who genuinely believed I was beneath them professionally. Mom and Dad had drifted over, drawn by the laughter. What's so funny? Mom asked. Daniel has to leave for a work emergency, Victoria explained, still giggling. Apparently the Hilton needs him urgently. On a Sunday? Dad frowned. That's inconsiderate of them. You should stand up for yourself, Daniel. Don't let them take advantage just because you're in a support role. I really do need to go, I said, checking my watch again. 4:25 p.m. Getting tight. What kind of emergency could housekeeping possibly have? Marcus asked, genuinely curious. Like, is someone important checking in? A VIP who needs their room prepped. Before I could answer, I heard rapid footsteps on the flagstone path. I turned to see Margaret Chin speed walking across the lawn in a business suit and heels, her expression tense but professional. She was carrying her tablet and looked slightly out of breath. This was not good. Margaret knew I was at a family event. She wouldn't have come in person unless something was genuinely critical. "Mr. Chairman," she said as she approached, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet section of lawn. "I apologize for interrupting, but the board meeting starts in 5 minutes and we have several urgent matters that require your immediate attention before we convene." The silence that followed was profound. Mom's champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips. Dad's expression froze mid-smile. Christopher's martini actually tilted dangerously, nearly spilling. Victoria made a small choking sound. Marcus's face went through several interesting color changes. "Chairman." Dad's voice was barely above a whisper. "What does she mean, Chairman?" Margaret finally seemed to notice that she'd walked into something. She looked at me, then at my family, then back at me. "Oh. Do they not know?" "Know what?" Mom asked, her voice rising. "Daniel, what is she talking about? Why is she calling you Chairman?" I took a breath. Years of careful privacy, of letting them believe what they wanted to believe, ending in this moment on Victoria's engagement party lawn because my CFO needed urgent decisions about a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. "Margaret Chin, meet my family." "Family, this is Margaret Chin. She's the Chief Financial Officer of Cascade Global Hospitality Group." Cascade Global? Christopher's prosecutor brain was already working, connecting dots. The hotel conglomerate? They own like 20 different brands worldwide. 23 brands actually, Margaret corrected. Across 47 countries. 387 properties. We're the third largest hospitality group in the world by revenue. What does that have to do with Daniel? Victoria asked, her voice small. Margaret looked at me, silently asking permission. I nodded. Daniel is the founder and chairman of the board, she explained. He built the company from the ground up over the past 12 years. Started with a single boutique hotel in Boston, expanded through strategic acquisitions and organic growth. He's been chairman and CEO for the past 8 years, though he transitioned the CEO role to operational leadership 2 years ago to focus on expansion strategy. The silence was so complete I could hear the string quartet from across the lawn, now playing something Mozart that felt absurdly inappropriate for the moment. But he works in housekeeping, Mom said weakly. At a Hilton. He said he works at the Hilton. I said I work in hospitality, I corrected gently. You decided that meant housekeeping at a Hilton. I never actually specified. Cascade owns the Hilton brand? Dad asked, his face pale. No, Margaret said. We're a separate entity. Though we are in acquisition talks with Hilton International about purchasing several of their European properties. That's actually one of the items on today's board agenda. Marcus had found his voice. You're buying Hilton properties? As in multiple hotels. How much money are we talking about? The European portfolio we're discussing is valued at approximately 2.3 billion euros, Margaret said matter-of-factly. Though we're negotiating down. Daniel thinks we can close at 2.1. Christopher made a sound like air escaping from a balloon. Billion. With AB. The Tokyo situation is more pressing, Margaret continued, turning back to me and falling into professional mode because that's what we did when there were actual crises. The regulatory approval hit complications. The partners are threatening to pull out, which would kill the entire Pacific expansion strategy. Legal thinks we need to make concessions, but I disagree. I think they're bluffing and we should hold firm. What's the specific sticking point? I asked, my mind automatically shifting into work mode despite the chaos of the moment. Environmental compliance on the construction permits. They want us to use local contractors exclusively, which would add 18 months to the timeline and blow the budget by 40%. Counter with hybrid approach. 60% local contractors, 40% are established firms, with technology transfer guarantees. That gives them the local employment optics they want while keeping us on timeline and budget. Smart, she said, typing notes on her tablet. I'll brief legal. What about the London acquisition numbers? The projections look solid but conservative. Increase the revenue estimates by 12% in year 2, The King's Cross location will outperform based on the commercial development pipeline we're seeing. And push for better terms on the debt financing. Our credit rating just improved and the banks know it. Got it. And the Wall Street Journal quote. I thought for a moment. Something about strategic growth in emerging markets while strengthening presence in traditional strongholds. The usual expansion strategy messaging. Have PR draft options and I'll review during the helicopter ride. Helicopter. Victoria's voice cracked. You have a helicopter? Company helicopter, I clarified. Shared asset. More efficient than fighting Manhattan traffic for board meetings. Dad had sat down heavily on a nearby chair. You own a hospitality conglomerate worth billions of dollars. Own is a strong word. I'm the majority shareholder and chairman, but we have institutional investors, private equity partners, the usual structure for a company our size. How big? Christopher asked. His prosecutor instincts had recovered, and now he was in cross-examination mode. What's the company worth? Margaret pulled up data on her tablet. Current market cap is approximately $17.4 billion. Though we're private, so that's based on our last funding round valuation. If we went public, which we're considering next year, analysts estimate we could hit $25 to $30 billion depending on market conditions. Mom made us sound like a wounded animal. But you said you worked at the Hilton. For years you said you worked at the Hilton. I said I worked in hospitality, I repeated. The one time I mentioned specifics. About 4 years ago at Christmas, I said I was overseeing property acquisitions for a multinational hotel group. Dad said that sounded like boring business travel and changed the subject to Christopher's latest trial. After that, I stopped trying to explain. The Patek Philippe, Maria the caterer whispered, still standing nearby with her tray. I knew it. Margaret checked her watch. Chairman, we really do need to go. The board is assembling and you have 3 items requiring pre-meeting approval. The helicopter is waiting at the airfield. I looked at my family, all of them frozen in various states of shock and confusion. Mom's face had gone pale. Dad looked like he might be having a medical emergency. Christopher's prosecutor confidence had evaporated into pure bewilderment. Victoria had tears in her eyes, though whether from shock or embarrassment I couldn't tell. I'm sorry to interrupt your party, Victoria, I said sincerely. Your engagement is important and I wanted to be here to celebrate. But I do have actual responsibilities that can't wait. You let us think you were nobody, she whispered. For years. You let us think you were a failure. I let you think what you wanted to think. There's a difference. Every time I tried to explain my actual work, you talked over me or made assumptions or offered career advice about moving up from housekeeping. Eventually, I realized you weren't interested in my reality. You had a narrative that made you comfortable and contradictory information just didn't register. But we're your family, Mom said, her voice breaking. Why wouldn't you tell us? I tried. You didn't listen. So I stopped trying. Marcus, Victoria's successful entrepreneur fiancé who'd offered to connect me with his hospitality management consultant cousin, had gone very quiet. He was staring at me like I'd just revealed I was a different species. You're Daniel Ashford, he said slowly. You're the Daniel Ashford. The one who revolutionized boutique hotel acquisitions. The one who pioneered the experiential luxury model. I read a case study about your expansion strategy in my MBA program. That's flattering, I said, because what else could I say? I offered to have my cousin give you career advice. My cousin who does hospitality consulting. I offered to help you break into the industry. His face was cycling through mortification. Oh my God. Margaret touched my elbow. Chairman, I hate to push, but we really are out of time. The board is assembled. If we don't leave in the next 60 seconds, you'll be late to your own meeting. I nodded and turned to my family one final time. We'll talk later. Right now, I have a company to run, a Tokyo crisis to manage, and a London acquisition to close. Enjoy the party. Victoria, congratulations on your engagement. I'm genuinely happy for you. Daniel, wait, Dad started. But Margaret was already moving and I fell into step beside her. My security detail, 2 men who'd been discreetly positioned at the edge of the property, invisible to my family, materialized and formed up around us as we walked toward the waiting car. Behind us, I could hear voices rising. He owns a $20 billion company? Why didn't we know? All those times we gave him career advice. The housekeeping thing. Oh my God, we told everyone he worked in housekeeping. Did you see his watch? That's a Patek Philippe Grand Complications. Those cost more than my car. The black Mercedes S-Class was waiting at the end of the driveway, driver ready. We slid into the back seat and the car pulled away smoothly. Through the rear window I could see my family clustered on the lawn, staring after us like spectators at a car accident. That was dramatic, Margaret said mildly, opening her tablet. Should I have announced you differently? How were you supposed to know they didn't know? I pulled out my phone and started reviewing the pre-meeting briefing materials. They've spent a decade not asking questions about my actual life. This was inevitable. Still, finding out your son owns a global hospitality empire at a garden party must be jarring. They'll adjust. Or they won't. Right now let's focus on Tokyo. Walk me through the negotiation points. The drive to the airfield took 12 minutes. The helicopter, a Sikorsky S-76 corporate model, comfortable but not ostentatious, was prepped and ready. We lifted off as the sun began setting over Connecticut, banking toward Manhattan as Margaret briefed me on the remaining board agenda items. The flight took 18 minutes. I spent them reviewing acquisition data, approving operational changes and drafting response strategies for the Tokyo situation. By the time we touched down on the helipad atop our corporate headquarters building in Midtown, I'd made 7 major decisions affecting operations across 3 continents. The boardroom was on the 48th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, a table that sat 24 executives and board members, state-of-the-art presentation technology. 12 board members were already assembled, along with key executives from various divisions. They stood as I entered, not out of ceremony but out of respect. These were serious people, former hotel CEOs, private equity partners, real estate moguls, finance experts. People who'd built and sold companies, who understood what it took to create something from nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. Thank you for assembling on short notice. We have several time-sensitive matters to address, starting with the Tokyo regulatory situation. Margaret, walk us through the current status. The meeting ran for 2 hours. We resolved the Tokyo crisis with the hybrid contractor approach I'd suggested. The Japanese partners accepted it within 20 minutes of our counterproposal. We approved the London acquisition with revised revenue projections. We discussed the Wall Street Journal profile and aligned on messaging. We reviewed Q3 performance across all divisions and approved strategic initiatives for Q4. By 8 p.m., we'd addressed every critical item and adjourned. Several board members lingered to discuss specific issues, but by 8:30, the room had cleared except for Margaret and James Rodriguez, my EVP of operations. Productive meeting, James said. The Tokyo resolution was elegant. And the London numbers look solid with those revised projections. We should celebrate, Margaret suggested. Successful crisis management, major acquisition approval, strong quarterly performance. That's a win worth acknowledging. My phone had been buzzing throughout the meeting. Texts and calls from family members that I'd ignored. Now in the quiet of the emptying office I finally looked at them. 47 missed calls. 63 text messages. Multiple voicemails. Christopher, we need to talk. Please call me back. Victoria, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Nobody knew. Why didn't you tell us? Mom, Daniel please. We feel terrible. We had no idea. Please call us. Dad, son, I owe you an apology. Several apologies. Can we talk? Even Marcus, Victoria's fiancé, Mr. Ashford, I apologize for my comments. I had no idea who you were. Please accept my sincere apologies. I stared at the messages for a long moment, feeling nothing in particular. Not anger, not satisfaction, not vindication. Just a sort of tired inevitability. Your family? Margaret asked quietly, realizing they've spent a decade being wrong about me. Processing. Panicking. Are you going to call them back? Eventually. Not tonight. James checked his watch. It's Sunday night and we've been in crisis mode all day. You should go home. Get some rest. The family stuff will still be there tomorrow. He was right, of course. But home was a penthouse apartment in Tribeca that my family had never visited, that they'd assumed was a small rental when I'd mentioned living in Manhattan. Going home meant being alone with the fallout of a revelation I'd never intended to make. "I think I'll stay and work for a while," I said. "Still have some things to catch up on." Margaret and James exchanged glances, the kind of look that said they understood what I really meant. That I was avoiding, processing, not ready to deal with the personal chaos. "Don't stay too late," Margaret said gently. "Even chairmen need sleep." They left and I was alone in the silent office. Through the windows, Manhattan glittered below. Millions of lights, millions of lives, a city that never stopped moving. Somewhere out there in Connecticut, my family was probably still talking about me, about the revelation, about how they'd missed something so fundamental about my life. But here, in this quiet office overlooking the city, I was just Daniel Ashford. Chairman of a company I'd built from nothing. A person they'd never bothered to know. My phone buzzed one more time. Text from Christopher. "I spent 10 years giving you career advice. I told the chairman of a multi-billion-dollar company that he should be more ambitious. I'm never going to forgive myself for this." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed a response. "You gave me advice based on who you thought I was. That says more about your assumptions than my reality. We'll talk when I'm ready. Not tonight." I sent it and silenced my phone. Tomorrow I'd deal with family. Tomorrow I'd have the uncomfortable conversations and accept the awkward apologies and try to rebuild something honest from years of misunderstanding. But tonight I had work to do. A company to run. Decisions to make. A life they'd never understood and probably never would. I pulled up the Q4 strategic planning documents and got to work. The family drama could wait. The actual job, the one they'd dismissed as housekeeping, came first.